My name is Talia Simone Reeves. And growing up, my last name was treated like a brand, not a legacy. A product. Reeves Natural Organics was started by my grandfather in the 1970s, a small line of natural skincare and health products sold at farmers markets and out of the back of his truck. But when he passed, my parents expanded it into something big, really big. They opened a chain of shops across 3 states, started online sales, and eventually, they began training family members to represent the business at public events. That's where the trouble started. See, I wasn't the right kind of Reeves. Not to them. I had my dad's skin, deep brown and rich, like soil, thick, coily hair that refused to be tamed unless I spent hours stretching and braiding it. Full lips, strong cheekbones, and a voice that didn't shrink when people expected silence. My cousin Janessa, on the other hand, was the ideal face for the company. Fair skin, long straight hair, delicate features, a soft-spoken manner that never offended anyone. Guess who got to be in every catalog? The first time I realized something was off, I had designed an entire skincare campaign for school. Posters, logo redesign, a mock website. It was sleek, modern, honest. When I showed it to my mom, she looked impressed, until she saw the model I used. It was me, my photo, smiling, glowing, holding a jar of our family's product. Her expression tightened. You couldn't find a more commercial-looking image? I blinked. I thought I looked nice. You do, she said too quickly. But for business, there's a certain look people expect. My stomach turned. At 15, I offered to intern over the summer. My dad said yes, but my mom insisted I stay behind the scene. Inventory, order fulfillment, making spreadsheets in the warehouse. Meanwhile, Janessa got flown out for a natural beauty expo. Smiling in photos, standing next to my uncle in a custom booth, giving interviews she barely prepared for. I remember watching one clip on Instagram. When asked about the company's mission, she giggled and said, "We believe in clean, honest products for all skin tones." All, except mine, apparently. Still, I kept trying, because back then, I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I was smart enough, skilled enough, good enough, I'd eventually be seen. At 16, I built the family's first online ordering app. It was clean, fast, and mobile optimized. I taught myself to code it after school. When I presented it to my dad, he said, "That's impressive, Talia." My mom added, "Let's have Janessa test it on video. She's more market-friendly." That's when I realized something gut deep. I could build the table. But they'd never let me sit at it. I spent my senior year quietly withdrawing, not from life, from them. I saved money from tutoring, got a scholarship, started posting anonymously online. Not rants, not anger. Education. I made TikToks and YouTube shorts under the name A Boldly Brown, teaching about colorism, representation, and the unspoken rules that still shaped too many families like mine. I used green screen effects to show how diverse companies picked the same 3 skin tones for every campaign. I broke down ads from inclusive brands and showed how they pushed darker women to the sidelines. And people listened, quietly at first, then in droves. By the time I turned 18, I had 30,000 followers. By graduation, 100,000. And not one person in my family knew. I kept it that way, because I knew if they ever saw me succeeding without their approval, they'd either try to take credit or tear me down. Instead, I smiled politely through our family BBQs, sat in the back at Janessa's Brand Ambassador of the Year speech, nodded through meetings where my mom said things like, "You have a great energy, Talia. It's just better suited behind the scenes." But I was never behind. I was just waiting, watching, recording, because one day the opportunity came, the kind of moment you don't expect, but that you know exactly how to handle when it finally shows up. It started with an email. A brand rep from SheSource, one of the biggest natural beauty companies online. "Hi, Talia. We came across your content from A Boldly Brown. Would you be interested in being the face of our new campaign, Unapologetically Real?" I almost dropped my phone. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anyone. I just said yes. Flew myself out to New York, sat in a real studio, had my makeup done by a black woman who said, "We've been waiting for a face like yours." And when the campaign dropped, everyone saw it, including my family. The first time I realized the ad had gone viral was when my uncle sent a family group chat message that said, "Talia, is this you on the ShareSource homepage?" My phone lit up with confused emojis. My mom's number called. I didn't answer. I was too busy standing in Times Square watching my face flash across a digital billboard above thousands of people. Too dark, too loud, too visible? Not anymore. I didn't go home right away. After the ShareSource campaign dropped, I stayed in New York for another 3 days. Long walks, quiet breakfast. The kind of silence that doesn't hurt. The kind that heals. My phone didn't stop buzzing the entire time. Hundreds of DMs. Thousands of comments. Finally, someone who looks like me. I cried watching your video. Your words hit deep. Your skin is so beautiful. I hope you know that. And the one that hit hardest. My own mother told me to stay out of the sun. Thank you for showing me I was never the problem. When I landed back home, the first thing I saw at baggage claim was my mom. Her arms crossed, her lips pinched. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. "Get in the car," she said flatly. "No welcome back. No we're proud of you. Just control." Cold and tight, like always. The silence in the car was thick. Then, finally, she said it. "Why would you do something like this without telling us?" I didn't flinch, because I knew you'd try to stop me. She let out a bitter laugh. "So now you're the face of what? Exactly. Rebellion? I'm the face of me. Well, you used our name, our legacy." "No, I didn't," I said calmly. "I used my own name, the one you tried to keep off every label." Her jaw clenched. "You're being dramatic." I turned to her, tired. "No, I'm being visible." When we got home, my dad was waiting in the kitchen, Uncle Marcus, even Janessa, the whole brand committee, as they called themselves. It felt like an intervention. Except I wasn't the one who needed saving. "Talia," my uncle began, "you blindsided the family. You should have talked to us." "I spent years talking," I said. "You just weren't listening." He tried to soften his tone. "You have every right to be proud. But we built this company together. You're still part of us." I raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" Because for years, the only thing I was allowed to be was quiet and out of the way. Janessa finally spoke. "We didn't mean it like that. It's just we had a certain image." I stared at her. "You mean your image?" My dad shifted awkwardly. "We just didn't want to confuse the market," he said. "When customers see someone like Janessa, they see clean, healthy, approachable, white adjacent." I interrupted. He stopped cold. The room went silent. And then, softly, I added, "I see. So I was never the problem. You just didn't think the world would accept someone like me." That's when my mom snapped. "You're twisting everything. You're ungrateful. This family gave you everything, and now you're out there making us look bad." I stood. "No, you made yourselves look bad. I just gave people another option." They didn't say anything after that, because they knew it was true. For the next few weeks, things were tense. I moved back in with my best friend Carmen, and her mom, the same woman who once braided my hair before school when my mom didn't have time. The house smelled like sage and cocoa butter, and kindness. Teddy, their big brown pit mix, lay his head in my lap like he'd been waiting. Carmen and I stayed up late, editing a new video. "Let's talk about being marketable," I said into the mic. "Let's talk about how companies and families use coded language to erase blackness." The video went viral in less than a day. And then the backlash started. But it didn't come from strangers. It came from them. My cousin Janessa posted a vague tweet. "Sometimes the loudest voices are the most bitter." Just saying. Family business. My uncle released a press statement. We support all skin tones, but recent statements by a family member do not reflect the values of Reeves Natural Organic. And then, the cherry on top, my mother went on a local radio show. She called me confused, said I had an attitude problem, said, she's my daughter and I love her, but she's letting online strangers fill her head. I heard it, and for the first time, I didn't cry. I got focused. I made a response video. Clean, clear, calm. I spliced her radio interview next to photos of me working in the warehouse, emails showing I built their app, clips of her refusing to let me attend Business Expo, and the full legal document showing I'd waived my claim to any future company earnings just so she couldn't accuse me of trying to profit. At the end, I looked into the camera and said, I don't want your money, I don't want your fake support. I want the truth, and I want girls who look like me to know they don't need to shrink to fit your version of family. That's when everything changed. The views tripled. The New York Times emailed for an interview, and Essence magazine ran a cover story titled Too Dark, Too Loud, or Just Right: How Talia Reeves Redefined Beauty Without Asking Permission. I went from ignored to in demand, spoke at panels, signed a modeling contract for a Black-owned skincare line, got invited to speak at Howard University and Spelman College, and all without ever mentioning my family again. I didn't have to, because they were fading quietly. Their sales dropped. Their comments flooded with questions. Why wasn't Talia ever featured? Do you really believe what your founder said on the radio? Is your business really for everyone? They turned them off, then closed the comments entirely. Eventually, my mom called. She left a message. You've made your point. Congratulations. But don't forget where you came from. I listened, then deleted it because I hadn't forgotten where I came from. I just remembered who I was always meant to be. The night the Essence article dropped, I sat on Carmen's roof with a hoodie pulled over my braids and Teddy curled beside me. The headline still felt unreal. Talia Reeves. The voice they tried to mute. The face they tried to hide. I didn't cry. I just sat there and let the wind brush over my face. Because I wasn't in hiding anymore. And I didn't need to prove anything to anyone to be seen. The article had already done that for me. They'd flown out a Black woman journalist to interview me in person. She had locks, red lipstick, and a tone of voice that said, I already know. Take your time. We talked for 4 hours. About the company. About my family. About growing up watching my features be erased from every mirror, catalog, and Christmas card photo. She didn't interrupt. She didn't look shocked. She just nodded, like she'd heard versions of this story before. But then, she said something I hadn't expected. You're not just the face they tried to hide. You're the legacy they tried to rewrite, and couldn't. The article went live at 8:00 a.m. on a Friday. By noon, it was trending. Comments poured in. My daughter has skin like yours, and just said you're her new role model. I've been bleaching for years. You made me want to stop. You look like everything they said we couldn't be. And the one that stuck in my chest. You didn't just bury their business. You resurrected our reflection. Meanwhile, back at Reeves Natural Organics, things were falling apart. They posted a thin apology about missteps and representation. People weren't buying it. They pulled Janessa's face from the website. But they didn't put mine up either. Too little. Too late. One of my old coworkers messaged me in secret. They've had 2 big clients pull out. Nobody trusts the brand now. Your mom had a full meltdown in the office last week, said you were ruining her life. I almost laughed. But I didn't, because I knew the truth. I didn't ruin anything. She just finally lost control of the story. I was building something else now anyway. Carmen and I had registered a small LLC, Boldly Brown Media. We wanted to turn the account into something bigger: storytelling, workshops, speaker events, a podcast. The first guest I brought on, a dark-skinned actress, who'd been told to stay in supporting roles. Her first words were, "Thank you for not waiting for permission to exist loudly." Then came the invitation. A producer from The Daily Show reached out. They wanted to do a segment called Too Dark for the Family Business, and they wanted me to sit down and talk about the layers of racism that can exist inside a Black family. It would be national, televised, unfiltered. I said yes, not to embarrass them, but to free the next girl who didn't have the words yet. Before the show aired, I visited my old high school. Miss Jordan, my guidance counselor, saw me walk in and gasped, "Talia, look at you. Look at you." She hugged me, then pulled me into her office, where she kept a tiny space heater and a picture of Michelle Obama on the wall. "I still remember the day you came in here crying after your cousin got the modeling gig, and you were told to do inventory." I laughed gently. "Yeah, that was a rough week." She looked at me with pride and softness. "You turned it into something. Not everyone does." We sat and caught up for an hour. Before I left, she handed me an old envelope from her drawer. "I kept this from your sophomore year." It was a note I had written for a mock application to my dream job back then, creative director for a beauty brand. In tiny handwriting, it read, "I want to create something where girls who look like me see themselves on every wall and know they belong." I swallowed hard. "I guess I did." "You more than did, baby," she said. "You became it." The night of the interview, Carmen and I sat on the floor with popcorn and root beer. I wore a marigold blouse that made my skin look like it had been kissed by sunlight. I had done my own makeup. I didn't let anyone else try to correct my tones this time. The interview was calm. I didn't yell, didn't accuse, just told the story, step by step. How it started with little comments, how I watched my ideas get passed off, how my skin became something they thought had to be hidden for the brand to succeed. The host leaned forward. "What do you say to families who are watching this, who think they're not colorist just because they're all the same race?" I didn't hesitate. Colorism isn't just about hate, it's about absence. The absence of people who look like me from your pride, your pictures, your praise. It aired at 9 p.m. By 9:15, Talia Reeves was trending nationwide. The next morning, I got an email from Vogue. They wanted to do a feature on women changing beauty from the inside out, and they wanted me on the cover. Not Janessa. Not a model. Me. I closed the laptop and sat very still. Because it wasn't just about the fame. It was about how long I had been told to sit in the shadows. And now, the world was asking me to step into the light. That evening, I walked through our local grocery store and noticed something. The Reeves Natural Organics shelf was almost empty. Not sold out. Removed. There was a handwritten note taped where the display used to be. Product line pulled following customer complaints and controversy. "We support brands that uplift all skin tones." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just turned my cart and walked down the next aisle. Because I hadn't destroyed their business. They did. I just refused to stay quiet about it. The letter came 2 weeks after the Daily Show interview. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't kind. Just a plain envelope, slid under Carmen's front door. Inside, a typed message. "You've made your point. You've embarrassed the family. We'd like to meet. Privately." No signature. But I didn't need one. It was my mother's wording. All cold civility and veiled control. I stared at it for a long time. Carmen leaned over my shoulder. "You don't have to go." "I know," I said. But I also knew I would. Not because they deserved an audience, but because I deserved a last word. The meeting was held in my uncle's office. The same one I wasn't allowed in during my years behind the scenes. I walked in wearing white linen pants, gold earrings, and the Shea Source necklace they'd sent me after the campaign. My skin glowed. And for the first time ever, I didn't apologize for taking up space. Janessa was already seated. She wouldn't look at me. My mother stood by the window, arms crossed. Uncle Marcus offered a stiff nod. Dad looked tired, smaller than I remembered. "Thank you for coming," my mother began. I said nothing. She pressed on. "We understand that you felt overlooked, that mistakes were made. Like erasing me was a typo, but this public smear campaign you've started." I told the truth. I interrupted. "You told your truth," she said sharply. I leaned forward. What part of it was false? Silence. My uncle cleared his throat. Regardless, the brand is suffering. Long-time clients are backing out. We've lost 2 retail partners. That's unfortunate, I said. Maybe they didn't appreciate being associated with a company that erases its own family. Janessa finally looked up. We didn't erase you. I stared her down. Then why did you get every opportunity I was qualified for? Why was my image never once used? Even when I created half the content. She looked away again. That's what I thought. Then came the offer. My dad pulled out a folder. We're restructuring. We'd like to bring you on as co-director of brand development. Rebuild trust. Share your story under the company's umbrella. I blinked. You want to own my story? No, he said quickly. We want to share it. I smiled tightly. You had 18 years to share it. You chose silence. My mom stepped forward. Talia, enough. We're trying to make things right. You don't need to keep making us the villains. You made yourselves that, I said. Every time you chose aesthetics over ethics. Every time you called Janessa the face while I was in the back, packing boxes. Her voice rose. You were never meant to be the face. And that's when she realized. She said it out loud. The very thing she always danced around. You were never meant to be the face. The room went still. My hands didn't shake, because I had already made peace with the truth. They never saw me as beautiful, as brand-worthy, as visible, and now the whole world had. Without them, I stood. I don't want to roll in your company. My uncle frowned. But we're giving you control. No, I cut in. You're giving me scraps now that your spotlight burned out. I walked to the door, then turned. But thank you for finally saying what you really meant. I looked at my mom. Turns out I was the face, just not of your brand. And then I left. Back at home, I filmed a video. No lighting team, no makeup crew, just me. I spoke straight into the camera. Today, my family asked me to come back. Not because they believed in me, but because they needed me. They didn't want to fix the story. They wanted to control it. But here's what they don't understand. I don't need their name. I made one. It hit 1 million views in 12 hours. Later that week, I got a message from a girl in Detroit. I started wearing my hair out because of you. I used to wish I looked like my cousins. Now I wish I looked like me. I cried for 15 minutes straight. Because it was never about revenge. It was about reflection. Letting other girls see their worth where I once only saw erasure. The next month, Boldly Brown landed a distribution deal with a Black-owned publishing house. We'd launch a photo book called Unedited. Every image raw, dark skin lit like art. No filters, no excuses. We sold out pre-orders in 48 hours. My face, the one they once hid, was on the back cover, full page, smiling, free. My mom never called again, but one day, an anonymous package showed up at my P.O. box. Inside was a photo. Me, age 7, at a booth holding one of our family products. The image was faded, but there I was, smiling, hopeful, forgotten, taped to the back, a sticky note. In my mother's handwriting. Maybe I got it wrong, that's all it said. No name, no apology, no signature, just that. I stared at it for a long time, then tucked it away, because I didn't need her permission anymore. I had my power, and it was louder than her silence had ever been. The first time someone asked me for a selfie in public, I almost said no. I was at a bookstore, hoodie pulled up, browsing the art section, when a teenage girl approached me. Her hair was braided into thick, golden brown ropes. Her skin was almost identical to mine. She held her phone tight like it was a passport. Are you Talia Reeves? I blinked. Yes. Her whole face lit up. Oh my God. You're the reason I started my own YouTube channel. You're the reason Her voice cracked. The reason I stopped hating my nose. My heart broke open. We took the selfie. And then, I sat in my car afterward and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I knew this was what I had needed. Once. The world I was in now didn't just see me, it listened to me. Major brands reached out, but I said no to most of them because I wasn't interested in being a token. I was building my own table now. Boldly Brown Media launched its first official project, a documentary series titled Beyond the Billboards. Each episode featured a Black woman or girl who had been told she was too much, too dark, or not the right look. The first episode? Me. We shot it in my old neighborhood. I walked past the storefront where my mom used to take Janessa for photo shoots, while I packed orders in the back. We shot in the local church where the ladies whispered about me being pretty but strong featured. And we ended at the mural I helped paint downtown, a towering portrait of a Black girl with natural hair, brown skin, and a crown made of sunflowers. The plaque below read, "Visibility is power, and so is softness. This is for every girl they told to dim her light." Meanwhile, my family's company was fading fast. They'd rebranded twice in 6 months, changed logos, tried to rebuild trust. But their Instagram comments told the real story. Still no apology? Too late. Bring Talia back, or pack it up. And then came the final blow. An exposé in a major online magazine. It detailed how the company excluded darker-skinned models for years, how internal emails leaked, showing terms like "not photogenic enough" next to names like mine. My mother denied it, but the emails didn't lie, and neither did the silence that followed. At a youth summit in Chicago, I met a girl named Serenity. She sat in the front row, hands folded, eyes wide. When Q&A opened, she stood. "I used to edit my pictures so my skin looked lighter," she said. "Then I found you. Now I post myself in sunlight, full brightness. No filter." I held back tears as the whole auditorium clapped for her, because that's what this had become, not revenge. Redirection, taking what they tried to bury me with, and planting something unstoppable. A week later, I received an invitation from Forbes. They were naming me one of the top 30 under 30 in media. Me, the girl who wasn't marketable. The girl whose own mother told her to stay behind the scenes. I wore a deep plum dress to the shoot. I insisted on lighting that didn't try to mute my undertones. And when the cover went live, my name was in gold. My face, centered, bold, unapologetic. That same week, a letter arrived at my office. This one wasn't cold. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten. Shaky penmanship. Faded ink. It was from my grandmother, the one who had passed before I hit high school, the only person who used to call me Sunbeam because of my skin. It read, "Talia, if you're reading this, it means the world finally caught up to who you always were. Don't let them dull you. Don't let them edit you. Don't let them convince you that your skin was a mistake. You are made of night and light. You are my favorite reflection." My breath hitched. I hadn't seen her handwriting in nearly a decade. I pressed the letter to my heart and whispered, "I hope I made you proud." At the Boldly Brown office, we framed that letter, hung it right over the studio desk, because it was more than words. It was a reminder that my story didn't start with rejection. It started with legacy, one that wasn't tied to my last name, but to my full presence, my full shape, my full sound. I got a text from Janessa around that time. It just said, "I see you now. I'm sorry. I didn't know how much they erased you until they started erasing me." I stared at it, then replied, "Visibility costs, but silence cost more." She didn't text again. I didn't need her to. The truth is, I didn't hate my family anymore. I just didn't belong to them the way I once thought I had to. Because sometimes, blood is not a bond. It's just a test, and you decide how much of yourself you're willing to bleed for it. I chose peace, but not silence. I chose love, but not permission. And I chose the kind of spotlight that doesn't blind. It reveals. I used to dream of hearing my name said with pride, not as a whisper, not as a warning, not as a burden, but with pride. That dream used to feel so far away. Now, it greeted me in the form of strangers, editors, young girls, even school teachers, sending letters and videos that all began the same way. Talia, you don't know me, but I know you saved me. We'd just passed 1 million subscribers on Boldly Brown's channel. Carmen made cupcakes. Our intern, Layla, a high schooler who'd been bullied for her natural hair, printed a giant photo of the Forbes cover and taped it to the wall with glitter pens. I stood in the doorway for a minute, just watching, because I needed to absorb, to take in the truth that the girl who once packed soap orders in silence was now leading a team of black and brown creatives, and no one was asking her to smile less or straighten her edges. We launched a summer mentorship program, Mirror Mirror, free workshops, confidence training, on-camera skills, no filters, no bleaching, no fixing, just young girls learning how to speak and stay spoken in their own voices. Our first workshop was held in the same community center where Janessa once gave her brand youth ambassador speech. Only this time, the applause wasn't reserved for lightness. It was loudest for the girls who had once been told to fade. Meanwhile, the Reeves family business was officially under review. A local news story revealed unpaid interns, token hires. One whistleblower said she'd been asked to wear lighter makeup for a campaign shoot. My mother denied the allegations in a carefully worded video, her lips tight, her tone as rehearsed as ever. The comments weren't kind, and for the first time, even Janessa didn't repost it. I didn't cheer, didn't share it, didn't say, "I told you so," because this was never about revenge. This was about letting the truth breathe and watching what couldn't survive outside the shadows. One afternoon, I received a call from the principal of my old high school. He said they were updating the media and ethics curriculum, and they wanted me to come back. Not just to speak, but to have a unit built around my story. How to build visibility with integrity, he said. How to fight quiet erasure. When I walked into that classroom, the students clapped. Some stood. My old desk was still in the third row, the same seat where I once sat, pretending to be invisible while my cousin passed out brand flyers and people whispered about how perfect she looked. Now I stood at the front, and I told the truth. I didn't become visible when the world saw me. I became visible when I saw myself. When I stopped begging for permission to belong and started building space for people who looked like me. A girl raised her hand. Her skin was a deep, beautiful mahogany. Her eyes bright. "Did it hurt when they rejected you?" I nodded slowly. "It did. It still does sometimes." "Are you angry?" I thought for a second. Not anymore, because they tried to make me feel like I was the problem. But all they did was protect me from being part of a story that was never written with me in mind. The class went silent, and I smiled, because they understood. Carmen surprised me the next week. She had reached out to a local artist, a black woman who worked in metal sculpture, and together they'd created a piece for the studio entrance. It was a tall bronze mirror, but the reflection was etched in metal, not glass. A stylized silhouette of a black girl with a full nose, thick curls and a head held high. Below it, in bold letters, "You were never too dark, they were too dim to see." I ran my fingers across the surface, and for the first time in my life, I didn't wish for lighter. I didn't wish for less. I just whispered, "Thank you." A week later, we held our biggest panel yet. A full auditorium. Sold-out seat. Black women from all industries, fashion, science, film, education. I was the last speaker. The host introduced me, not as daughter of the Reeves brand, but as founder of Boldly Brown, architect of representation, and the face they could no longer erase. I stepped on stage in a marigold suit, no makeup to soften me, hair natural, full, crown-like. The applause didn't stop for a full minute. I spoke from the center of the stage, no podium. They told me I was too much, too bold, too brown, too visible. But I learned, the world changes when we refuse to be dimmed. I became the face of something else, something they couldn't control. And from here on out, every girl who looks in the mirror and sees herself, she's part of that face now too. That night, as I stepped outside into the warm air, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Time magazine. They were naming me in their annual 100 Women of the Year issue. I stood there in the moonlight, letting that sink in, not for pride, but for peace, because I knew, without a doubt, this wasn't a comeback. It was a coronation. It had been almost a year since I walked out of that family meeting. 12 months, countless stages, millions of voices rising beside mine, and still, one phone call could shake my breath. It came from a nurse. "Ms. Reeves, your father's in the hospital. He asked for you." Not Janessa. Not the board. Not my mother. Me. I didn't rush. I took a quiet shower, packed a hoodie and sunglasses, and brought a copy of the Boldly Brown anthology in my bag, just in case. The hospital was cold, too white, too quiet. I found him in room 317, alone, hooked up to a monitor that beeped slower than I remembered his voice ever being. His eyes opened when I walked in. "You came," he said, barely above a whisper. I sat down. No hug, no apology, just a steady gaze. "I did." We sat in silence for a minute. Then he said, "I saw the Time article." I nodded. "You always said I was ambitious." "I didn't mean it as a compliment back then," he said honestly. "But now, I think I was just scared of how right you might be." I stayed still. "You tried to keep me small," I said. "It didn't work." "I know." There was something in his face I hadn't seen before. Regret, maybe. Or grief. "My own mother was dark," he murmured. "And I watched her get pushed aside her whole life. I thought if I protected the business, we'd be safe." "No," I corrected him. "You would be safe." He blinked. "I wasn't trying to erase you, Talia," he said. "I just didn't think the world would accept you. But I accepted me," I said. "And that was always enough." He closed his eyes. "Your mother won't admit it," he said softly. "But she watches your videos. All of them. I've heard her crying behind her office door." I looked away. Sometimes tears come too late. I stood to leave. He reached for my hand. His skin was cool. "Are you ever coming home?" I met his eyes one last time. "I did," I said. "You just didn't see me then." And then I walked out. The next day, I received a text from Janessa. "I saw your new cover. You look like freedom." It was the first thing she'd said to me that didn't carry guilt or denial, just truth. "Thank you," I replied. "I hope you find yours too." Carmen and I were invited to speak at Harvard the following week. We stood on a stage twice the size of our apartment, and when it was my turn to speak, I told them the story, how a family that built a business on beauty had tried to define it so narrowly, they forgot it. Started with their own daughter. A student raised her hand during the Q&A. "Did you ever feel like giving up? Like you'd never be enough?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, but here's what saved me." I realized they didn't have to believe in me. I just had to stop believing them. Afterward, we passed by a pop-up art gallery hosting a photography exhibit. Inside was a photo I hadn't expected. It was mine, taken from the Shea Source campaign. But beneath it, the caption didn't mention their name. It said, "Model, creator, and cultural catalyst. A woman who became her own light." A few days later, I received a formal letter. Reeves Natural Organics was filing for bankruptcy. I stared at the letter for a long time. Not with joy. Not with spite. Just peace. Because I hadn't needed to destroy them. They collapsed under the weight of the truth they tried to avoid. And I had simply stood still. Visible, unapologetic, and undeniable. The first time I saw my face on a billboard in Times Square, I stood there quietly. No entourage. No cameras. Just me. Looking up at a 30-foot version of myself in a gold head wrap and unapologetic brown skin. No filter. No edits. No one else's approval. Just the girl they once said was too dark for the brand, now shining over a street filled with people who could finally see her. The campaign was for a new skincare brand I co-founded, rooted in Radiant. Every model had been told "you're not our look" at some point in their career. We made it our slogan. "We are the look. You just weren't looking hard enough." The day the brand launched, we sold out in 3 hours. Not because of influencers. Not because of trends. but because people were tired of being erased, and they trusted the girl who never tried to become anyone else. A journalist asked me during a press event, "Do you forgive them now?" I paused. "My family?" I said. She nodded. "The ones who said you weren't the right fit, the ones who kept you in the background." I smiled slowly. "I don't carry bitterness anymore. I just carry boundaries. Forgiveness doesn't mean I go back. It means I moved forward without the weight." And I had moved forward. Our Mirror program was now nationwide. We held storytelling retreats, mentorship camps, even taught brand building classes for young women of color in underserved schools. Carmen and I became known as the Visibility Sister, which made us laugh. Because we still did each other's hair on the floor while eating gas station chips and watching reruns of old documentaries. We never forgot where we came from, but we never let it define where we were going. One afternoon, I got a letter, no return address. Inside, it was short. "She still doesn't say it, but I think she knows now. I'm sorry, Talia. Janessa." I smiled. Not with pain, not with triumph, just with understanding. Because I knew now. Some people never say I was wrong, but life says it for them. I was invited back to my hometown to speak at the unveiling of a new mural. When I arrived, I gasped. It was 3 stories high, a black girl, brown as earth, eyes closed in peace. Across her chest were the words, "I became the face I never saw." I looked closer and realized it was based on me, but it wasn't just me. Her nose was different, her lips fuller, her eyes a shade lighter. It was an amalgamation of every girl who had ever felt invisible and finally saw herself reflected. And that was the point. That night, I went home and pulled out an old photo. I was 10, holding one of the family product jars, standing next to Janessa. Back then, I had tried to stand in her shadow so I wouldn't be compared. Now I looked at that little girl and whispered, "You were always enough. You didn't need a lighter filter. You just needed time." When Time released their voices that changed a generation cover, I was on, not alone. Beside me were 5 women of color, each with her own story, each with her own shade, texture, and brilliance. I wasn't the face anymore. I was part of something bigger. The business my family once tried to gatekeep was gone. The name dissolved. The office building for lease. Their empire faded because it was built on exclusion. Mine thrived because it was built on truth. People often ask me, what do you say to girls who feel too dark, too loud, too bold to fit in? And I always say the same thing. You don't need to fit in. You were never meant to. You were meant to stand out. Not as decoration, but as proof that we exist, that we matter, that we don't have to change our reflection to be worthy of one. And me? I no longer walk in rooms wondering if I'm too much. I walk in knowing I'm the story, I'm the face, and I don't need anyone's permission to shine.